I was a few months into my research on the book, and I was really having a hard time sort of getting my head around how I was going to tell this huge and complex story. And I was actually thinking about just pulling the plug and giving back the advance and, you know, just moving on with life. But then my wife and I had this really sort of life-changing experience, and that's what I'll read about. Labor Day 2007 was a glorious summer day in northwest Michigan. Temperatures hovered around 80 degrees and there wasn't a cloud in the azure sky. My wife and I parked at the end of a dirt road that led to a secluded bay in the Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore, about 30 miles west of Traverse City. There, we kicked off our shoes and began the quarter-mile walk through low-slung sand dunes that separated the Lake Michigan beach from an adjacent forest. As we strode eagerly toward the lake, we encountered a young couple in beach attire. They walked at a brisk pace away from the deserted shoreline. Disappointment was etched on their faces. That was odd. It was a glorious afternoon, and there were few better places on the Great Lakes to spend a day at the beach. The remote stretch of sand afforded stunning panoramic views of South Manitou Island and dunes that rose 450 feet above the glistening waters of Lake Michigan. How could anyone walk away from such beauty so obviously disgusted? I was seized by curiosity. "How's the water?" I asked. "Oh, we're not that brave," the woman replied. It was apparent from the scowl on her face and their quick pace that the couple was in no mood for small talk. Cresting the dune, our mouths fell open. We could see why the couple we passed on the path seemed so perturbed. A wide strip of dark green algae that looked like cooked spinach and had a faint odor of sewage blanketed the shoreline as far as the eye could see. A dead Chinook salmon, its white belly glinting in the sun, rolled back and forth in the dark green molasses waves. Several dead birds lay scattered across the miles-wide beach, eyes plucked out by scavengers. Thousands of dead Dracena mussels, zebra and quagga mussels native to the Caspian Sea in Eastern Europe, littered the beach. Clumps of mussels were interspersed among the bloated carcasses of round gobies, an ugly little fish with bulging eyes that made it look like a creature from a low-budget horror movie. Gobies were also native to the waters of Eastern Europe. Out of nowhere, the invasive fish and native birds began washing up dead on scenic beaches that were far removed from the environmental insults of humans. It was a carnage we had never experienced in our previous visits to this wondrous lakeshore. The park's biologist later explained how the problem began in August 2006 and quickly mushroomed. Dead gulls, mergansers, and common loons, the icon of the North, started washing up on the beach along Platte Bay that year. It began with a few birds, but the epidemic claimed 2,900 birds over a 3-month period. Hundreds more birds died the following year. The killer was neither man nor beast, but a bacterium. Botulism, better known as food poisoning, had killed the birds and fish. It seemed the foreign mussels and gobies had assembled an unnatural, toxic food chain that was claiming thousands of native birds and fish around the Great Lakes. The list of casualties included bald eagles, piping plovers, and massive lake sturgeon. Something was terribly wrong. Our beloved lake was sick. That was evident in the dead birds and fish the lake regurgitated onto the beach. Sadly, this sickening scene was not unique to Lake Michigan. An identical strain of botulism had been killing birds for several years along the shores of Lake Erie, Lake Huron, and Lake Ontario. Only Lake Superior was spared the bird kills that became an annual event in parts of the Great Lakes during the first decade of the 21st century. Our plan for a relaxing day at the beach turned out to be something far different, an encounter with icons of a mounting ecological disaster. That was the moment I resolved to write this book. In my estimation, this was a story that had to be spread far and wide, its causes and consequences explained in vivid detail. What follows is my attempt to explain what precipitated the great biological invasion of the lakes, how it could have been prevented, or at least slowed, and why it wasn't. These magnificent lakes, which contain 18% of all fresh surface water on the planet, are worthy of the most lavish odes. An honest review of how the St. Lawrence Seaway transformed the Great Lakes ecosystem demands an elegy.